Look, well done on making the time to, jump online today. I love the new year for the motivation that we get from, to do a whole bunch of different things in life, whether it's health goals or career goals or money goals or anything in between. And I think money is one of these things that it isn't easy. So you've got to use every advantage that you can. And, riding that wave of New Year's motivation is one of those things. So today I'm pumped to share, I think, particularly with mindset as a topic at this time of year, just nailing your mindset to then flow through to all of the different areas of your money. It does have a huge impact. So keen to share like the tips and some of the learnings that we've picked up over the years for that. Big shout out firstly to our event partner, Perla, for partnering with us on this event. If you're not already around what they're doing, they're up to some pretty cool stuff. So definitely do check them out. Obviously pretty helpful when it comes to, investing and doing this stuff to build wealth as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tactics there as we go through today. Upcoming events and other content, if you're not already across us on different channels, particularly our events, we've got a handful of events that are scheduled over the next few months, just about to drop our next series of events from April onwards. So stay tuned for that. You can follow along on Ben Nash Pivot Wealth Eventbrite, or all the social channels, podcasts, and that sort of stuff as well. Guys, please don't rush out and make any life-changing decisions off the back of what we cover. I strongly suggest you seek out personalized advice before jumping in. If you're making big decisions, you probably should be doing that anyway. So look, I thought I'd start with a story that talks about some of the impact of some of the ways that mindset can impact what you're doing. So these clients we've been working with for a little while, age 32 and 33, income 200,000 plus 60K, total net asset position $370,000, saving $3,000 a month, of which $1,000 a month was going into cash and $2,000 a month going into ETF investments. Now, when they came to us, they were feeling like they really wanted to buy their dream home, but just thought it was going to be a huge stretch and pretty much unachievable. They were doing investing and not investing, it wasn't necessarily a small amount, investing a couple of $1,000s a month, but they were really uncertain about, the investments that they were making, if they really were the very best things for them, or if there was a better option out there. Quite frustrated with tax bills. In this couple, it was actually the lady who was a higher income earner, earning at 200K. She was paying a boatload of tax. She was the one that was also very focused on money. So she'd been doing a bunch of investing. So that was creating then more tax consequences as their investments grew. And they felt that they were really missing a trick, a way that they could be smarter with what they're doing to get more out of what they already had. What we found when we started scratching the surface and getting into all of the detail was that because this lady had been the one in the couple, and I find that this typically happens in relationships, that you've got one person that's more focused on money or more drawn to money than the other person. So because she was more interested in this space, that she had been doing the research, she had set up the investment account, and she was owning all of these investments in her name. But what that meant, because her taxable income was much higher and her marginal tax rate was much higher, it meant that all of that income that she was earning was then adding on to her taxable income, and she was paying tax at the top marginal tax rate of 47%, where her partner only had a 34.5% tax rate. So they were paying way more tax than they needed to be. So the first thing that we did was we switched over the investments to her partner's name. And that way, she was able to considerably cut the tax that was paying on the investment income. At the same time, what we did was we used the First Home Super Saver scheme, which, if you're not already familiar with that scheme, is probably a little bit beyond the scope of the session today. But it essentially allows you to save up to $50,000 per person in pre-tax money through your super fund, and then withdraw that money so long as it's used to purchase their first home. And because these guys were sitting on a whole bunch of cash and they had high marginal tax rates, that created a considerable advantage for them. As a result of both of those things, they ended up saving $6,500 in tax in the first 12 months. But probably more importantly, they invested $61,000 in an extra $61,000 in year one. That was a combination of, they realized that they were sitting on more cash than they needed to protect themselves from emergencies and the upcoming stuff that was happening. And they ended up investing more. Plus, with their regular savings, they invested all of that $3,000 a month instead of only investing 2/3 of that. Now, when we looked at that and said, okay, if they invested $61,000 today, how would that money grow by age 60 just using the long-term share market return? And found that that meant almost an extra $1 million, so $937,000 of uplift in their wealth position, just as a result of investing that extra $61,000 in year one. So obviously a huge win, plus the tax savings on top of it. But here's the thing. These guys had been thinking about this stuff for 2 years, and I find that this is a really common story, particularly at this time of year, that people get all pumped up to do stuff, and you want to get on the front foot with your money, but then get back to work, life gets in the way, and it's really easy that before you know it, it's Australia Day, and then it's Easter, and then you're sort of kicking yourself for not having done anything, and then you get this weird guilt and shame spiral, and then you end up not doing anything more, and then it's back on your list for next New Year's. So that's what had happened with these guys, and they delayed 2 years in taking action. Now, if they had started 2 years sooner, I looked at what it would have been if they'd invested that $61,000 then. And in that case, the portfolio would have grown to $1.14 million. So basically, the opportunity cost of them not taking action for that 2-year period was over $200,000, so $202,000, which is obviously a pretty huge number. And to me, this shows the power of really nailing your mindset when it comes to investing and your money management. These guys were busy people. Life was sort of in the way, and money's one of these things that it is important, but it's not urgent. So it's really easy for it to go onto the back burner. And then before you know it, a whole bunch of time has passed and you miss the opportunity. Nailing that part of your mindset, it pays massive dividends, as you can see from these numbers. Also, just knowing that it's not just about what you read in the headlines, but that if you want to really make smart decisions, you need to figure out what the very best thing for you is to be doing. That also is a big part of your mindset. And for these guys, they lent into that, ended up doing this. If they'd just done it, they're still going to be fine. They're on a good pathway, don't get me wrong. But if they'd just done it a bit sooner, they would have ended up being so much better. So once again, it just shows why this stuff is so important, and why I'm so pumped to share the mindset hacks and trips with you guys today. So some key lessons there, urgent and important. I just mentioned having confidence is a really big one, because finding the time to do this stuff is one thing, but I find that the fear of FOFU, so the fear of fucking up, basically the fear of making a mistake, is paralyzing for a lot of people. That it's not enough to just want to make good decisions, but if you don't nail your mindset and you don't have a few other things in place, when it comes to actually pulling the trigger on your investments and taking action, the fear of making a mistake, the fear of effing it up, it ends up stopping you from doing things. And it's only the taking action, making the investments, opening that investment account, buying that property, whatever that is, that's what's going to actually generate you the results. So you've got to get the confidence to get there. At the same time, we do have a bunch of challenges around our psychology. And I think our inner investor works against us in a lot of cases. That, money success is about essentially saving and investing money today that you could otherwise spend today, so that you've got way more money in the future. And we know that having heaps of money in the future is something that we want, but we also, in the moment, it's like, if you could go splurge and spend $5,000 on a holiday, that's going to make you happier in that moment for a lot of people than putting $5,000 into an investment account. So that pleasure seeking can be a roadblock. It's also really hard for us to identify with our future self. There's a lot of studies. I sort of nerd out on the money psychology side of things, and there's a lot of studies, particularly if you're in your 30s and 40s, it's really difficult to identify with the person that you're going to be in your 50s and 60s. You don't know what that person is going to look like, what they're going to want, the things that are important to them. So you find it really difficult to prioritize that person ahead of you where you are right now today. The comfort of the known is another big one as well, that playing it safe. And this is a money thing, but it's also a relationships thing, a career thing, a business thing. When we stick to what we know, that is the safe option. That saving money in cash in a bank account feels good. There's no risk in that. It's just sitting there. You know, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can withdraw it at any time. There's no risk of it going backwards. But also, you're not going to get rich saving money in a bank account. So when it comes to investing, that comfort of the known we're drawn to, but we know that really pushing through that to get to the taking action and taking a bit of a leap means that they're the things that are going to allow you to play a bigger game. And if you get stuck in that comfort of the known, it means that you're always going to be limited in terms of what you can be. Willpower is limited is the final one on there. And I think there's a lot of studies that have shown we've only got so much willpower that we can flex. So when it comes to your money and your money mindset, if you have to flex your willpower too much to get the results that you want, you're much more likely to get off track, or much more likely to not be able to consistently maintain that willpower needed to get the results that you want. And your results end up suffering as an outcome. So there's today, and for your money mindset generally, and in terms of what I'm going to cover today, there are three main areas that I want to focus on. There's money biases, so some of the mindset things that impact our money decision-making, our investment decision-making, limiting beliefs, which really can sabotage our money decision-making as well. And then there's a handful of mindset hacks that I'm keen to share with you, as well as the principles to the principles for success as well. Got a question from Scott, and you just reminded me, Scott, that I actually didn't say anything at the start. But guys, as we're going through today, please feel free to pop any questions into the Q&A as we're going through. I'm happy to get a little bit off track and answer those, and I will have a section for questions at the end as well. So pop them just directly into the Q&A tab. Scott asks, any tips on how to discuss these sort of tips with partners who have very little interest in exploring anything outside of the comfort of the known, especially using more than just banks to hold money? Look, it's a really great question, Scott. And I think for partners, getting alignment between two people in a relationship when it comes to their money is really crucial to coming even anywhere close to achieving your financial potential. If you've got, and typically people will have different approaches to things and different ways that they engage with money, different money mindset things, but also different preferences around money as well. So getting a level of alignment there is going to be really important and accelerate your progress to where you want to be. One thing that there's a few things here that can be helpful. One thing is using a third party like an advisor, and obviously I'm a little bit biased in being an advisor, but using a third party, probably an advisor, but maybe someone that's not an advisor, to facilitate your discussions around money can be really helpful, because then you've really got a third person that's steering the ship. I know for me personally, when it comes to discussing things with my wife, that I can be pretty pushy with my decision, my opinions, and the things that I think are important. And that can be problematic when you've got someone that generally, it's the person that's more focused on this stuff, that's pushing, at alignment, or what sounds like potentially an outcome when it comes to investing or saving more, that you lose a level of that independence. So sometimes having that facilitator can remove that person from having to do that and make it a little bit easier. Outside of that, though, I think a big thing with the particular question, which is that comfort of the known and actually investing money outside of just putting it in a bank account, taking the time to understand the impact of just saving money in a bank account and what that means for your other financial goals. For pretty much everyone, you're going to realize that you're not going to get to where you want to be by just saving money in a bank account. The days are gone of our parents' generation where you could just buy a house, pay off the mortgage, and then save money in the bank, and that was going to be enough. I think it's like the stuff that we want to do is more expensive now. The cost of doing everything is more expensive now, that is just not enough. So often when you see, okay, well, if we keep saving in a bank account, it's going to mean that our wealth position gets to here, and really we want it to be here, then you're going to say, well, something needs to change. And then if you both collectively recognize that something needs to change, that that's not going to get you to where you want to be, then your next step is, well, okay, what are the options to get there? And I'll talk a little bit about what they are, but there's only so many ways that you can build wealth, and each of them come with benefits, and each of them come with downsides. And choosing the best path is going to be different for every person, every couple. But firstly, acknowledging that something needs to happen, something needs to change is a first step. Then that puts you in the tent together. So hope that helps, Scott. On that note, yeah, look, I think that, like I said, I sort of nerd out on the money psychology and decision-making stuff, but yeah, our inner investor, our inner money manager is really set up to fail. And particularly you'll understand more when I talk about some of these biases that we'll discuss and limiting beliefs, that there are really a lot of things that are stacked against us when it comes to your money. Good news is that there are ways that you can hack your thinking, but our predisposition really lends us to making poor money decisions and poor investment decisions. So understanding is really the first step. You can hack your thinking, but you've got to know what it is that you should be aiming for, or where things can go wrong. So talking about biases firstly, and there's some really interesting stuff here to unpack. Also ties in nicely with investing decision making, which I think is really relevant for everybody, particularly in the year that's coming, in the way that 2023 is shaping up. The first thing, and this also ties into Scott's question and the previous comments here around loss aversion. So the pain that we feel when we lose money is much more than the pleasure that we feel when we make an equivalent amount of money. So what that means is, if you were to lose $100 or $1,000, that's going to hurt you much more than the corresponding positive feeling that comes with making an extra $100 or $100,000. We feel loss more than what we feel upside. And so that pain, the fear of feeling that loss, is also stronger than the potential upside of feeling the gain there as well. Confirmation bias is another interesting thing that impacts our investment decisions. And what confirmation bias is that essentially we're constantly looking to confirm what we think about things. So to put it in the investment context, if you think that buying Telstra shares, for example, is going to be a good idea, then when you're reading the paper and you read an article about Telstra, basically the positive news that you see in that, you will use as validation to confirm what your view is on Telstra. When you see negative things, though, that we tend to dismiss those on balance, and we dismiss them as either wrong or biased or incorrect or whatever. So why that's important for an investor is that if you're thinking about stuff, that there's also obviously a multitude of information out there about, investment market, property market, all of these things, that we can constantly be getting what we think is confirmation of what we're thinking, but we're actually blinded to some of the downsides, and it does tend to be a real issue. Information bias is another similar thing, but it's where we tend to feel that the information that we have available to us is a more complete picture of the information that's needed to make a good decision as what it actually is. So, for example, when you look at the share price of a company, you feel that that's a crucial piece of information when it comes to figuring out if an investment is a good investment or not. But the share price of a company is much less of an indicator of future performance than what a lot of people think. Similarly, when it comes to property market, other investments, superannuation, again, we tend to think that the information that we have at hand is enough. But what we see, like, for example, Elon Musk and Tesla shares have been pumped in the recent past after they hit a record number of their new vehicles sold. They hit this all-time quarterly record of, I think it was like 400,000 vehicles from memory, and everyone's going, oh yeah, that's great. And obviously Tesla is sort of taking over the world. Potentially it will be the world's most valuable company at some point. Great company, doing great things on the planet. I see Teslas everywhere in Sydney. But one of the key bits of information that was missing for a lot of investors is that Wall Street had predicted that they were going to hit like 450,000 vehicles, and because they fell short of the Wall Street expectations, it meant that they were much lower than the forecast, and the shares got pumped as a result. That's where information bias can really take things sort of the wrong way. Hindsight bias is another thing that we feel that we think that everything is clear in hindsight. And I have seriously lost count of the number of comments that I've seen on my TikTok about, this happened with the property market and everybody could have seen that coming, and Blind Freddy should have seen that, and we all knew that this was happening. But I can tell you right now that these people did not know that that was happening in the moment, because if they did know that it was happening, they would have made different decisions to the decisions that they actually made. When you look back at what's happened, you see, oh yeah, it was easy to see that, there was going to be a short-term spike from COVID, and actually the economies were going well, and therefore the share market was going to rally really hard. But I can tell you from being at the coalface and advising people and investing myself during that period, it was scary. And we helped a bunch of people to invest, and a bunch of people made a bunch of money, but not as many as the comments on Insta and TikTok and everywhere else would have you believe. So don't, and I know that I've fallen into this trap myself, that you think that things are simple when you look back, but in the moment and looking forward, it's actually way less simple. So there's a couple of good hacks that I've got to share around that one as well. Involvement bias, and this is something that I see quite a lot, particularly for people that work in companies and have employer share plans. Now, with involvement bias, basically how it impacts us is that we feel that when we're involved in something, that it has a much greater chance of success. The funniest example of this is that generally speaking, we are more likely to bet on the toss of a coin if we're present when the coin is tossed. So basically what we're saying is, if we're in the room when a coin is tossed, we think we've got a better chance of predicting the outcome of that coin being tossed, which is clearly ridiculous, because a coin toss has the same probability whether we're present in the room or not. Where that works when it comes to investments is that when you're involved in a particular company or with a particular company or in a particular sector, i.e. you're a tech worker and you work for Apple, and you go to the awesome team meetings and you drink the fancy lattes in the lunchroom and all of these things, that you see all these good things happening, and you think because you're involved that there's a greater chance of success. Similarly, I see this happen broadly across the tech sector, that people that work in technology companies and through the tech sort of bubble-ish that we've been seeing over the last little bit, people go, oh, tech's taken over the world. And obviously it sort of is, but that involvement bias makes you think that things are going better than they actually are. That can lead you to make bad investment decisions. So those are the main biases. I wanted to close this one out with another story from a client that we're working with over the last little bit. Also some mindset stuff. So this was a young guy. He was age 20, earning $120,000 a year. He was making good money pretty quickly for someone that young. He just fell into this sweet job where he was getting a really good paycheck. His assets were relatively low, $45,000 that he had really just in cash, and he was saving $2,000 a month. Came to us with no real system around what he was doing with his money. He was sort of pretty good with his money management generally, in that he was consistently saving, but he didn't really have any clear system or approach to that. He also didn't really know what he was doing. Like, he figured that he should be saving, but he wasn't really sure what he was actually aiming for with his money. And as a result, he was lacking motivation in terms of, where to from here. He knew he wanted to buy property, but that seemed like a massive undertaking that was going to be really far away. And as a result, was feeling like his progress was really slow towards what he was doing, didn't have any targets or goals. Now, what we ended up doing was we went through the process and set up a clear savings plan for his money, where we figured out what money he needed to be spending, what money was left over, and some investment target setting. So we took the time and we just really used a really simple compound interest calculator to say, if you invest X amount dollars per today and monthly moving forward, this is how we expect your investments would grow over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And as a result, he got super pumped on what was possible, because he could see that, particularly he had so much time on his side, that there was a bunch of upside potential as a result. Then he realized, because what we always look at, well, what if we did just a little bit more, and then not try to worry about, how to actually do that, but firstly look at what the impact was. And when we did that, he was blown away with the extra upside, and then he increased his savings by an extra $1,000 a month. For him, we looked at investing $61,000 extra. So basically, I think it was like $25,000 of the $45,000 in cash savings, plus $3,000 a month that he was saving regularly into the share market. And when we extrapolated that out from a compound interest perspective, it meant that $61,000 invested for someone that's 20 by age 60 would be worth over $3 million just investing in the share market alone. So not even including any property or anything like that. There's a couple of mindset elements to this one. The first one, and I touched on this before, but he really didn't have confidence in his investments, and he had that fear around making a mistake that was going to cost him a bunch of money. So as a result, he was treading water. The other big part, though, and probably the bigger part, was not being clear on his why, what he was working towards, what the actual target was, the objective of his investment was. When we went through that process, it was like a sort of a revelation for him, that he realized what was actually possible. And then immediately he was like, yes, I really, really want that. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't just saying no to blowing an extra $1,000 a month on living a bit better today, but instead he was saying yes to really hitting his straps from a wealth building perspective. And as a result, that shift was almost immediate, allowed him to invest a whole bunch more money. And again, just shows the power of really nailing your mindset and thinking around this stuff. I want to talk about limiting beliefs, and I'll give you a word of warning in this one, that limiting beliefs, they're pretty woo-woo. There's some pretty weird stuff, but I can also tell you that they are a thing. They're a total thing, and they're a thing that I see impact people's money, week on week on week. So basically, for anyone that's not familiar with limiting beliefs familiar with limiting beliefs already, basically the core premise is that there are a bunch of limiting beliefs that every single person suffers from to some degree. For some people, it's not much in some areas, but basically every single person has one main limiting belief that impacts them more than others. And then these limiting beliefs impact your decision making around not just money, but a whole bunch of different important areas in your life. Examples of limiting beliefs are things like, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, I need to control myself, I'm insignificant, which, as I said, it's pretty weird sort of stuff, but I've seen this play out in practice when it comes to your money. Other ones, I don't have the capacity, this is the way things are. That's my personal main limiting belief, that I get super caught up that there's a particular way that things should be done. If anyone goes outside of that thing, it's like a switch flicks in my brain, and I start getting stressed out, frustrated, or angry. I do it with my kids, I do it with my wife, I do it with my team, that I feel like there's a way that things should be done. And, why, I'm not sure, but, it's just the thing. I'm powerless is another one. I'm not allowed to be capable. So I'll get into this, but I can just see a question come through here. Says, hey, without being on a really high incomes, are there wealth building options that make it possible to get started on long-term wealth building while also being able to maintain a certain quality of life now and afford some big ticket items in the short term, i.e. home renovations, family, etc.? Finding this my biggest mindset challenge and roadblock to getting started on the long-term journey. Feels like it's not possible to afford both. That's a really great question, Charlotte. And if it's okay with you, I might defer the answer to that one, because I am going to talk about it when I talk about some of the success hacks a little bit later on. So if that's cool, I'm just going to park that one for now. And it's a really great question. And there is an approach. I don't know that there's a perfect silver bullet solution, but I'll talk you through my points on that when I get to that point. So how these limiting beliefs impact your money. I've just included the main ones here. Can't trust myself, others, or the world, which is for someone with this limiting belief that they're seeking sense of future, survival, safety, avoidance of violation. All sounds a bit weird, but talking about how this played out in practice, this is a client that we're working with a little while back now. He came to us with a clear problem around his money management, or clear opportunity and some gaps, and went through the process, but he wasn't trusting of the solution. And this is a really common one for people that feeling that they can't trust themselves, others, or the world, that there's a sort of like a subconscious level of distrust of everything, or a lot of things, basically. So he came to us and knew that he was leaving a bunch of money on the table. We went through this planning process, and there was a level of almost subconscious cynicism around, oh no, but what about this? But what about that? But what about this? And like, there's no perfect solutions when it comes to money. There's no thing that's going to make you a bunch of money and be risk-free and be easy and not mean, making some minor sacrifices. Like, everything is all about prioritization. And to Charlotte's question as well, like you've got priorities. You've got saving as a priority. You've got your big ticket spending is a priority. Your day-to-day spending is a priority. Your investing is a priority. And where those priorities rank for you is going to dictate what are the best decisions for you. So that's what, great financial planning, not necessarily with a financial planner, but great financial planning at an individual level is figuring out what your priorities are and where they rank, so that you can prioritize the things that are most important for you and deprioritize the things that are least important to you. When you do that, you end up with the perfect financial plan. So for this guy, even though we went through the process and sort of try to shape that up, and he chose the pathway that he wanted to go down, he still wasn't trusting the solution. He wanted almost like a guarantee of what was going to come up in the future, which the future is uncertain, and no one can guarantee anything. Anyone that tells you that they can is having you on. So that's an issue there. And for these people where there's this distrust is there, then again, it's a roadblock in making decision. While with that stuff, it's like the only uncertainty when it comes to money and the future really is uncertainty. But how you get around that is that you need to have a solid process and approach to your money decision making, and a solid approach to your risk management is really crucial. They both go hand in hand, but you need to have your risk managed, and then make sure that you're working through your decisions in a structured and robust way. And when you do that, you're going to end up in a good outcome. It's not going to be a guaranteed outcome, but it's going to be an outcome that you should be able to have trust in. Another limiting belief, and this is the main one, the primary limiting belief that impacts females more. To make sure I'm saying this the right way, it's the largest limiting belief for females. Why? I'm not sure, but the stats show us that. This client that we're working with a little while back was in this into this track, and we built a really good relationship, and we ended up talking pretty frankly about a whole bunch of this stuff. But when she came to us, she was wasting a ton of money on status spending, and she was buying like nice shoes and nice handbags, and spending a bunch of money on going out, shouting everyone rounds at the bar all of the time, and all of these things, which in and of themselves, these are great fun things to do. And I don't have anything against doing any of those, but at the same time, she had a bunch of debt. She was making a really good income, had a bunch of debt, so wasn't saving and was really going backwards. And so when you're spending money on things that are nice to have, but you're really not hitting any of your wealth goals, then that's not going to be it's certainly not a sustainable solution. It's not a good idea either. She wasn't prioritizing a long-term success, and she kept self-sabotaging her spending plan. We got her there in the end, but it was a really tough road for, sort of bending the behaviors to weed out some of those ones that were causing her issues, and end up baking in some habits that were actually going to lead to success over time. for people with this limiting belief, it's like it is a longer road. It does require a choice, and it generally requires a bit of time to change your behaviors and approach to actually get there. This one I rolled two together, which is I need to be perfect and there is a right way. This is my one, which I mentioned at the start. So yeah, it is a pretty common one as well, where we saw this client that was saving strongly, had a good foundation in place, but this happens a lot with super analytical people, engineers, teachers, and a bunch of different other highly analytical occupations where you're constantly being super detailed focused and have a focus on optimizing what you're doing. He was missing though a whole bunch of opportunities, and essentially what he did was when he came to us, he had this massive spreadsheet where he knew that he wanted to buy a property. He'd spent like 18 months analyzing the capital growth versus the income yield on all of these different suburbs, historical data, to try and find the perfect suburb to purchase his investment property in. Now, there's a little bit of merit in having an understanding of that stuff, but I can tell you for sure that it doesn't even really matter what happened in the last 12 months, that we do not know what suburbs are going to have the best rental growth versus the best capital growth in the next 12 months. So looking at all that data, you're not going to predict it. So there's really not a lot of point. It doesn't mean that you should just, throw darts at a dartboard, but it does mean that spending hours and hours doing this and delaying your investments by months and months to actually get there is not going to be helpful. So yeah, for this guy, it really was paralyzing. He missed out on a bunch of upside in the property market as a result of taking that approach. Tama says, what's the best way on working on your limiting belief once you've identified what it is? It's a good question. I think I might have this in another slide, but for anyone that's interested, if you look up limiting beliefs online, there's actually questionnaires that you can go through that can help you identify what your main limiting belief is and what other your secondary limiting beliefs are. I don't have any particular one that I would advocate for, but yeah, you can definitely do that. Then though, when you know what your main limiting belief is, that you need to acknowledge that that is a thing. And then when it comes to, when things happen in the moment, you need to try and stop, pause, take a breath, think about it, and then breathe. Like I know for me, when I get frustrated about thinking that there's a particular way that things should be done, when I get really worked up in the moment, I try to catch myself. Doesn't always work, but I try to catch myself and think, is this really important? Am I just being, insane about this? And most of the time the answer is yes. And then I try to reshape how I'm tackling whatever it is that I'm doing as a result with that. Hope that helps. Nicole says, where did you say you can do an assessment of your limiting beliefs? Just look that up online. I've got no particular website that I advocate, but if you look up limiting belief questionnaire or something, you'll see a bunch of them. You should be able to find something that's free or very, very cheap if you end up paying a few bucks. Nicole said, I feel like I have a bit of a cocktail of these. Me too, from time to time. And look, it's really funny. Like the reason that I started, I'd never heard of limiting beliefs before, but I did a content collab with this psychologist lady, and she was an expert in limiting beliefs, and she taught me a bunch of stuff as we were collaborating to put on this event. She started teaching me about it so I could understand, and then I was unpacking, and I was sort of being the finance expert around the practical sort of elements of what people could do. And then after she taught me about it, when I was talking to all of these people about their money, I was like, wow, I can see this stuff playing out. I can see it playing out in person. And it really changed how I thought about it. And like, I'm running a financial planning business. Our business grows from working with new people. And I talked to these people through these conversations that people had reached out and gone, oh, I need some help with my money. And I could see that there was a bunch of them that they get through the process, and it's like they're subconsciously, like they're not even aware of it, but they're self-sabotaging their ability to get the results that they want because of some of these limiting beliefs. And it's actually, I used to think that they were just difficult or prickly people, but I actually end up feeling a little bit sorry for them, that it's like, and for myself to a degree as well, that you go, these things they really do hold people back from doing things that are super valuable and super important to their lives. So it is a really great thing to be aware of and understand. Obviously, we're talking about this in the money context today, but it impacts a lot of things: career, relationships, and business as well. Got another question here that says, what's our view on buy now, pay later? It's great as an investment, terrible as a social construct. There's a short version on that one. Another client story to share again, and this sort of follows on from the limiting belief things, talking about distrust and debt recycling. Now, these clients were income $150,000, $200,000, home $1.3 million with an $800,000 mortgage, had a share portfolio $175,000, and they were saving at like $6,000 a month. So saving at a really solid clip. Half of that was going into cash or going into their mortgage, and half was going into their share ETF portfolio. These guys also paying a lot of tax. Tax is a pretty common frustration across most of the people that we talk to about money. But at the same time, they felt like they didn't trust getting any external help with their money. They spent a ton of time doing research on all of these different things they were doing, and they wanted to accelerate, but they recognized that they were sort of reaching the limit of what they thought they could do. They had a ton of spreadsheets where they researched this and researched that, but they didn't trust that someone would be able to help them with their money and help them in a way that wasn't conflicted or only self-serving, essentially. Now, what we ended up doing when they went through the planning process and we sort of opened their eyes to the possibilities, they ended up purchasing an investment property at $1 million. They did a debt recycling strategy. So they had this $175,000 share portfolio. What they did is they cashed that out, paid the $175,000 off their non-tax deductible home mortgage. At the same time, redrew the same $175,000 and invested that. Because they drew the debt to invest, what that does is it makes the interest payments on that portion of the debt tax deductible. So they basically swapped $175,000 of non-tax deductible debt with $175,000 of tax deductible debt, plus all of their regular investments moving forward were going towards this share portfolio through a debt recycling strategy as well. That generated $12,000 of tax deductions for them in the first 12 months. At the same time, the net cost of holding their investment property after funding the mortgage payments was meant that when you factored in the expected growth on that investment property at the long-term average on the property growth rate was $40,000 a year. So basically their annual upside in the first year was $53,000 every single year. For these guys, that, as I said, that they didn't trust that someone would help them in a way that wasn't conflicted, and they thought that they should be able to do it on their own. They had this deep distrust of stuff. But when we went through this process, they were completely blown away at some of the hacks that just basically got their existing money that they had today working smarter. For example, that debt recycling strategy, that was just one small change that immediately generated a ton of tax deductions every single year forever while they ran that debt. And these are the things that you can end up closed off to if you don't have the right approach, if you don't have the right mindset, and if you can't trust having someone to show you the possibilities, but do it in a way where you've actually got the confidence to execute, because there's a ton of content online that people can go through. But it's really hard when it comes to making $100,000 decisions or $1 million decisions from just reading some Reddit forum or listening to an awesome webinar, no matter how awesome the webinar might be. That you need to sometimes make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and then you're going to execute quickly and get results quickly. Mindset hacks. I might just push through these a little bit quickly because I must have been talking a bit much, that there's still a fair bit to get through. Mindset impact of these biases and limiting beliefs is that essentially it can stop you from investing, drives a bunch of self-doubt, talk, and inaction, stop you from getting help, and increase your levels of fear and stress. End up choosing bad investments, make irrational choices, you play into media hype, and you think other people are experts. And overall, you're going to have much higher stress levels around your money than you need to. When you feel like it can force you to thinking that money should be easy, and it's like this, then you end up this weird sort of like guilt or shame that you're not as on top of your money as you should be, or whatever, which is obviously not helpful. You end up spending more money than you should, you get off track more, and you end up self-sabotaging as well. It can lead you to want to, like our couple in the previous example, want to go it all alone, not prioritize your future self, not follow through to actually getting results, which is the dollars in your bank account and the increase in your wealth position, and act in a way that's inconsistent with your long-term happiness, the things that you really want for your life longer term. Ultimately, settle is my least favorite word in the Oxford Dictionary. But ultimately it does. If you're not on the front foot with this stuff, you end up having to settle on your goals. The hacks to get there though, and to overcome this, is the first thing you got to know is that you can't do it all yourself. It's impossible unless you're a finance expert and you're going to spend, I've been studying and working in this space for almost 2 decades. And I'm still learning every day. And I still use external help to help me with different things, not so much with my investing, but tax planning and tax strategy, that the rules are so complicated and changing all the time that of course I need an awesome accountant that's going to know all of the ins and outs and the execution on stuff to do it before. For most people, you're going to need much more than that as well. You also want to be aware of the psychological impact, catch your thinking. And this is the thing around limiting beliefs and how you overcome them. Be aware of how you're thinking. You've got to have this metacognition where you're thinking about your thinking. Then then think about it, take a breath, and trust your instinct. Your gut has a lot to go for it with what you think you should be thinking about stuff, as opposed to how you get emotional in a moment. You want to focus on what's really important. What are the things? What is great? What does success look like? What does great look like? And what are the real goals? And then prioritize. So set your priorities in terms of what's really important. You also, using a tried and tested approach and framework is going to allow you to get a lot more confidence in what you're doing, and mean that you're not going to have second guess or doubt the things that you're doing, the decisions that you're making, how you're saving, how you're investing, or whatever. Also, what that does is it allows you to reduce and eliminate conflict. When you reduce or eliminate conflict in the information that you're getting, the advice that you're getting, the support that you're getting around your money, then it means that you're not going to have the same levels of distrust. That can give you more confidence in what you're doing, more confidence to pull the trigger on stuff and ultimately get the results that you want. Building your knowledge and confidence, and it's great to have great support around you, and it's great to have great people like finance experts around you as well, but ultimately you need to know enough so that you've got confidence as well. Actually, just push through this one because I've still got a bit to get through. So I'm going to move on to success. I just got a question from EH. Says, any book recommendations that greatly help shape your mindset around financial literacy? Maybe you could clarify, EH, whether you mean specifically around money psychology or if you mean money more generally. But I nerded out on money psychology for a bit and basically read every book that I could consume. Oh yeah, that's good. One good one, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It is a super dense read. So yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat that one, that you need to be fully committed to that to actually get through it. But that's really goes into a lot about biases and some of the impact of those. Nudge is another one as well, pretty well written, a little bit of an easier read, but still goes into a fair bit of depth around the different biases and their impact as well. Yeah, they're probably two big ones. They've got The Psychology of Investing by Knopfsinger. That's another one. It's fairly dry, but also, very, very practical as well. Maybe I'll do a piece of content on that and I can circle back, but that should give you a good starting point. So success, I want to give you the principles and the things that you should be thinking about. Mindset is one piece, but what are the key elements that you need to make sure are practically happening when it comes to your money? So what I've found is, everyone's situation is unique, but there are some common challenges and some common things that you need to get right if you want to be successful. The three main things that you need to get right are your structure, strategy, and solution. Structure is about making it easy to save, making it easy to manage your money, and making it clear how much money you've got to work with when it comes to investing and saving, planning your buying property, buying shares, whatever the case may be. The next piece is strategy, and that's all about really knowing the different pathways that can take you from where you are to where you want to be. And solutions is the investments that you use to back up your strategy, making sure you're getting reliable, consistent progress over time and avoiding the setbacks and momentum killing mistakes. I just thought I'd share our approach to banking because I think that sort of shows, what's really important when it comes to your saving and how you should be managing your money. Essentially, when you're allocating your money, you've only got two choices between allocating it to your spending today and to your spending in the future. Your future spending is your savings and investments for the future. Your today is your day-to-day pocket money, walking around money, and also to who asked that question before? To Charlotte's question before, the lumpier, the savings to spend, the things that you want to spend on big holidays, upgrading your house, upgrading your tech, all of those sorts of things. Now, when you nail your approach to saving and money management, budgeting, etc., what happens is you end up automating your bills, you get guilt-free spending in your day-to-day, your unexpected expenses are covered, but importantly, you've got clarity on how much money you've got to save and the confidence to invest. And going back to Charlotte's question, which is like, how can you, if you don't have, $1 million a year of income, how can you make things work in a way where you are saving as much as you want, you're spending as much as you want today, and you're spending as much as you want on the bigger ticket things as well? The key is to really first understand what they are. So looking at here, how much money do you need to spend on your bills, your walking around money, your debt repayments, and then your savings to spend, and what does that mean for how much is left over? That's going to create a number. And what will often happen is, I know it happened for me, is that you need to then circle back and go, well, if I change these, if I spend a bit more here or a bit less there, it means that these other numbers are going to increase. And when you do that, then it means that then you're going to end up in a point where you're happy with how much you're spending and happy with how much you're saving. An important thing, though, to your question, Charlotte, is about if you look at where what your savings at that rate actually means for your other goals, then that's going to be an important indicator. Because if you want to do all of these things in the future and what you're planning to spend today and on the lumpier expenses is not going to allow you to do that, then you need to change on something. You need to change your goals. You need to change on the behavior. But if you do those things, and even if you're saving at a really low rate in the short term, but you can still do all the things that you want to do, then that's probably okay. So it really depends on you. The next piece that you got to do is have a rock solid plan where basically you've got a clear path from where you are to where you want to be. I won't go through all of the elements of this piece in detail, but essentially the key outcomes that you want here is you want to be able to live the lifestyle that you want today, but have clarity on the financial outcomes that you're working towards, and also to understand the different financial outcomes that are attached to going down different pathways. So whether you buy shares or buy property or crank your super or some sort of combination. The lifestyle piece is important. The numbers are important. The perfect approach is the one that balances the two. You also want to make sure that you're maximizing your financial potential and only taking smart risks into your plan. Investments, and I wanted to share an example talking about essentially starting with $0 invested today and saving $1,000 a month into the share market average. Basically, if you did this over the 12 months of the year, save $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year over a 10-year period, using a long-term return on the share market, in 10 years' time, if you did this today, in 10 years' time, you're going to have somewhere around $202,000. You keep that going for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to have, after 20 years, you put in total of $240,000, you're going to have about $750,000. 30 years, you put in 360, you're going to have over $2 million. 40 years, $485.9 million. Now, I'm going to contrast this with another example where for the first 10 years, you get paralyzed by choice, the fear of making a mistake, you let your mindset play, and you don't get started investing. You don't start getting those results. And if you look at where you're going to be every 10-year period, you're more than half, you've got less than half the amount of money in your wealth position that you otherwise would. And this is why overcoming your mindset really pays, and why it's so important. When you nail it when it comes to your investments, that the key is that you want to have automated investments, have confidence in what you're doing, and make sure that you're never forced to sell investments at the wrong time. That's something that's really important for investors. Just going to push through this one as well, just in the interest of time. I'm keen to share this model with you guys, and I hope you found those hacks helpful. This one talks about getting from where you are right now today to future state when it comes to your money. Now, when most people think about getting from where they are to future state, they think about getting there like a straight line, but because of the compounding impact and the time of money, it's actually a curve. So essentially in the future, you're going to be somewhere between doing really well with money and really shittily with money. If you're not 100% on track to end up in the ideal position that you want to be in today, you need to do some stuff to jump the line. You need to get started with your saving. You need to be smarter with your tax. You need to crack on with your investments. And once you do that, then you just need to take the next step and the next step and the next step, which is easier because you're already on the path. But the longer you leave it, the more time goes on, that jumping the line piece becomes more and more painful, and putting yourself in the best position possible really becomes impossible. So it doesn't really matter where you want to get to. If you want to end up saving $5 grand a month of passive income, that you need to save X dollars today. If you wait a week, a month, a year, 5 years, you need to save X plus. You need to save more and invest more to end up in the same position. It doesn't matter where you want to be. The easiest time to start is right now. The longer you leave it, the more you have to give up to get there. Guys, I hope you found that helpful. Look, I'm actually just going to pop this into the chat. Obviously, helping people with this stuff is our jam. So we do these 10-minute intro phone calls for anyone that's interested. Basically, 10-minute chat with one of our team, talk about where you're at, what is actually possible, and what you should be thinking about next. If we think we can help, we can talk about how. If not, we can point you in the right direction. We're very happy. We know that we can't be all things to all people. So for someone that's not really the right fit for what we do, we're happy to give you some resources and tips as to what you can actually do next to get the results that you want. But if we think we can help, we can also talk about how. And if you've got any burning questions about money, you can get those answered as well. I've just popped that link into the chat, did I? Oh, yes, I did. Sorry, I just got a couple of comments in there after that. So please feel free to get around that. Check out our upcoming events. Appreciate all the thank yous in the chat there. I've just got a minute to answer a couple of questions, but I'll just have a look what's in here. EH says, changing my view and understanding that not all debt is bad debt was profound and my mindset changed. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. That's a massive one. Ib says, if engaging a financial planner for the first time, what is the typical cost in Australia to get some sort of plan for yourself? Look, they say that the average cost is, I think it's like $3,500 based on some research from that, but it depends on what you're looking for, what sort of help you want and where you're at as well. If you're wanting a comprehensive, like full end-to-end financial plan, you're probably looking at something like starting at sort of $500 a month over a 12-month period-ish as a starting point. And obviously it can go up from there depending on what it is that you exactly want. So I hope that helps, Ibs. Trish says the time is now. That's great. Lindsay's asking about the recording. Yes, we will circulate that around. My jokes are funny alive, but you can check them out in replay. And Charlotte, you are very welcome. Guys, got a bunch of events coming up. Please check around that. Appreciate all the thank yous as well, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.